Hi, my name is Michael Trout, and I'm here to talk about my vision and hopefully persuade you to put a nomination for me to talk at TED. I'm going to be attending TED at a significant expense to me, and I'm hoping that at least I'll have an opportunity to address the audience about a vision I have for global education. Now, there are three surefire ways that in the next 10 years that we could turn and provide, or I would say bring about, e-singularity. E-singularity is the moment when all learning is free and accessible to everyone, and it's my vision. And the first thing is we need connectivity. Now, the hardest thing that we would need to flatten global education is actually the web. And it's been created. The web exists. Now, global connectivity is only at around 3 to 5%. But in reality, in the next 10 years, that number is going to skyrocket as India and China builds the infrastructure and technologies are developed that's going to allow everyone to have the same education experience or the same connectivity experience as we do in the Western world. Now, number two, content. We need to have education content accessible online. Now, here's the good news. With the advent of open education resources, when that refers to things like Curriki, it refers to Moodle, it refers to MIT World and MIT OpenCourseWare and Berkeley's C program and so on and so on. It's just the beginning. And in the last couple years, the open education resource has been expanding at an incredible rate. And the reality is that within the next 5 years, the entire education playlist, kind of like the genome for education, is going to be online. And I would argue, if you take all of global television in the last 60 years, everything we could ever imagine that we would want to power education has been created and is available in some extent for us to use. So that's number two. And number three, the one thing that we are missing, and ironically, it is the simplest of the three, is the tool. Now, the reason why we're missing it has a number of reasons. One is we haven't had the technology, and in essence, social entrepreneurship and really the social engineering aspect of the web has only really developed in the last 5 years. I don't know if you remember, but 10 years ago, the idea of LinkedIn or Facebook, someone would be trying to charge you $14 a month for that service. So, in reality is the tools that's going to allow us to take that content and the hard part, deliver it, which isn't the hard part because the infrastructure web is there and being developed, exists. So what would this tool look like? Well, the tool will look like a television, the thing that we know most. The tool that most children grow up with, my son loves and watches every day. The tool will function like a television, and it will allow anyone to learn. Now, the content I've already talked about is going to come from 60 years of global television. It's going to come from all the open resources. And the tool will allow us to take any content in any language, translate it into any other language, and deliver it specifically to an end user. Now, you may say, well, there's a lot of end users. Well, I'd recommend you do a search for technology called Lion's Head Milo. Now, it's funny because the CEO describes all this as, no one else has ever thought of this. Well, if you read my stuff 4 years ago, I wrote what I called the experience. And as a gamer who's been in, who has had the opportunity to beta test some of the latest games, it's pretty obvious that the AI would grow to an extent where Milo is. And I even described the avatars in the experience, which are in many ways is your ultra ego as a user, very much to the extent that has been created with Lion's Head Milo. So for the first time, here is technology that could be used that would allow basically the AI to, hey, recognize it's a child, to deliver content, and the way that we would go about it is to test that user to see what he knows, and ultimately interact and keep that person or that individual engaged. So there's other technology. That's one. Another one is juiced IPTV. Unfortunately, they went belly up, and they, in many respects, are ahead of their time. But anyone who ever saw that application, and I'm not talking about what you see on the web now, but their application, the moment I saw it, I was like, well, there's our application for education. Now, unlike television, the solution I envision is autonomous. What do I mean by that? It means it's delivering content based on the needs of the individual. Unlike a television, it's always delivering content based on, what the provider wants to provide you. This is actually looking and tailoring the content to the individual. Now, the other aspect of what I envision is play. I'm a teacher, and in watching my son grow, he's 2 now, and he's a master of the iPhone, let me say. Education is all about play, learning, and play. And ultimately, the platform that I envision for global education and learning is a platform that ties in those two things. You watch, and then based on that information and that learning, you play. And you play games. And these games, there's over 6,000 games on iPhone, if you check on applications. Every one of those games, or developers, could be equally motivated to provide games for a global education platform that I call the eSingularity platform. And deliver it through the web that already exists. Now, that's it. It's a pretty shitty message. This is what I'm going to stand up and say in front of the people, but I don't know if it's a shitty message, but the reality is we have the pieces to flatten global education. Now, I may be one of the only or few CEOs in the world who on a daily basis teaches kids, And I made that choice because, for me, it's about living a vision and demonstrating in tangible ways that we have a civic call to help the billions of individuals out there who don't have the fortune that we do, don't have the schools, don't have the opportunity. And it is our calling to provide those individuals that opportunity. And I'm sharing with you the means to do so. And I'd like to share with the world via TED the reality that we can flatten global education. We could have a platform in place within 3 years, and by doing so, we may be just saving humanity.